Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Throwdown. I'm Logan Hansen, joined as always by Isaiah Butler and Mackenzie Whittington. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different with our new segment called The Leadoff, where we are going to go through the biggest news of the week for the MLB. So I'm going to drop it to Isaiah. Tell us about the biggest news that happened this week.
Right, so Clayton Kershaw got pulled after 7 perfect innings, 80 pitches pitched. Dave Roberts pulled him after that, big controversy there. And that same night, Vlad Guerrero Jr. had 3 home runs after getting his hand stepped on at first base. And then the MLB celebrated Jackie Robinson Day on April 15th, and Shohei Ohtani added 2 home runs that same day. And also Freddie Freeman, against his former team, first at bat against the Atlanta Braves, he hits a home run in Dodger Stadium. Kind of a bittersweet moment there for him, but Mackenzie, what do you got?
Justin Verlander pitched 8 scoreless innings for the Astros against Seattle, which was his most since 2019. Yanks ace Garrett Cole pitched his shortest game of his career, going 1 2/3 against the Detroit Tigers Tuesday. Key injuries also stacked up with players like Byron Buxton, Mike Trout, and Jose Altuve, as they all had to leave their games and are expected to miss some time. Tempers flared in San Diego when the Padres' Luke Voit collided with Reds catcher Tyler Stevenson at home plate, while rookie Hunter Greene made his history by throwing the most 100-mile-an-hour pitches in a game with 39 on Saturday night. Speaking about the Reds, Logan, I know you were able to connect with some Cincinnati beat writers this week.
Yeah, I talked to Wick Terrell of SB Nation's Red Reporter. I also talked to Clay Snowden of Just Baseball Media, talking about the Reds' early start of the season as well as their off-season moves. Let's get to it. Clay is the MLB and Reds contributor for Just Baseball, working with us today. How are we feeling today, Clay?
Pretty good. It's early in the season. A lot of time for overreaction. So it's always a fun part of the year, the first 2 weeks, and kind of diving in and overrating teams and stuff like that. So I always love this time of the year.
Yeah, me too. I definitely agree with you there. And it's good just to have baseball around. You know, we were worried about it for a while, so it's good to have baseball here.
Yeah, I always say no matter how bad your team is, it's 3 hours of entertainment for free every night, and you can't beat that.
Exactly. I don't blame you there. So looking at this Reds team, what has been the fan reaction of the offloading of players like Nick Castellanos, Sonny Gray, Jesse Winker, and others this offseason?
Yeah, the fan reaction was not positive. This was a team that was built for 2019, 2020. COVID obviously affected financials. Move into 2020. 2019 was a good team. If they had a full season, it could have been a great team. In 2020, they just barely missed the playoffs, still beat the projected win total. And the ownership, which fans have really turned against, decides to kind of move some pieces, sell off. It started with letting go of Wade Miley, who went to the Cubs on just a waiver claim to save $10 million, and a trickle down from that. They pieced together a team with some familiar names, some guys past their prime, and just a lot of underperforming players at this point.
Yeah, and you can see that a little bit with their slow start so far. And why were these moves made now? Is this just a signal of a rebuild, or is it something else? Is it strictly the financial, like, we just can't afford these guys, we have to cut bait?
I truly think some moves were smart. I think moving off of Wade Miley was smart. 35-year-old coming off a career year, little bit of injury past. I think moving Sonny Gray at the right time was smart, and they got the first-round pick, Chase Petty, who's only 18, 19 years old, high school arm, but still a good player. But in reality, this team is being set up for 2024, in my opinion. They have Hunter Greene, Nick Lodolo, Matt McLain, Jose Barrero, the list goes on, of promising young talent, and they wanted to get a few of the rotation spots open for those young players. And, when they moved Winker, and a lot of the issue with Winker is he's a elite hitter versus right-handed pitching who can't hit lefties, can't run, and can't field. They already have enough players like that. I saw that as an opportunity to sell high on him, which is something that failed their last rebuild. This is more of a retool, in my opinion.
Okay, retool over a rebuild. I understand that. But why do you feel that they agreed to do this now? You mentioned Hunter Greene coming up at the time he did, other top prospects coming up, which they needed the space to, granted, but they had a moderately successful season a year ago and were just under, a Cardinals miracle run to making the playoffs.
Sure.
Just why do you feel like they decided now is the best time to strip everything away, go bare bones?
I think that they built a team that was mostly based off of hitting the home run, and that was it. And in reality, it did not work for them. They know in Great American Ballpark, where the Reds play, you can hit a ton of home runs. It's easy to hit home runs there. It hasn't worked out for them. They decided, okay, we need some players that offer something else besides home run power. Nick Castellanos would have been nice to bring back. In my opinion, they said, okay, he's not going to be the difference this year between a playoff team and a not playoff team. We don't want to tie up the money. Waiting until 2024, setting up, getting young players some experience. That's when the Joey Votto contract comes up. That's over 20 million, and the Mike Moustakas contract of 16 million, along with a few others are offload and they'll be able to reload. But yeah, the timing was a bit weird after 2 successful seasons, but I think they saw the writing on the wall. And the last rebuild was botched because they sold low on everyone. Jay Bruce, Aroldis Chapman, the list on that rebuild goes on, and not a single good return for any of that. So I think that they were still a little bit shy and scared from the last rebuild.
I can understand that. And it seems that your mindset is that this rebuild will take couple of years. 2024 is really that target year where they'll kind of grow off and get going a little bit. Just who are some names to keep an eye out for that 2024 season on the Reds and in their system right now, or maybe like a free agent to be at that point who is like, hey, circle this, Red fans, this would be a good player to add?
Yeah, sure. So 2024 is when I think their contention window opens, and that's what it's all about. You have a window to compete. Saying World Series or bust, if that's your mentality, 29 fans or groups of fans are going to be upset. Matt McClain is a guy who they selected in the first round during the COVID season, plays shortstop, can play center field, can play a little bit all over. He's what Nick Senzel was supposed to be. Can hit, really good hit tool, bat to ball skills, hit for the cycle on Sunday, killing it. Ellie De La Cruz is a 19-year-old with all the talent in the world. Little bit of swing and miss. He's a couple years away. But if he starts excelling, I mean, that he's a top 100 prospect. Hunter Green has already dipped his toes into the water. Nick Lodolo, same thing. These are important 2 years for them to just gain some experience right now. Kind of learn how to pitch at that MLB level, so that when they do get into their competing window, they have 2 top of the rotation arms. And Jose Barrero is kind of forgotten about because he's been up 2 different times. He's injured. It's still too early to give up on Jose Barrero.
Yeah, I understand that. And like you said, Hunter Green and Ladero over there, I mean, really just strong pitching staff that hopefully they can build, like you said, those first 2 years. That'd be great. Yeah. Before I let you go here, just real quick, a bold prediction that you have for this Reds team. It can be any player, anyone, record, anything, just a bold prediction.
Okay, bold prediction. Let me think. I think Jonathan India will be the best second baseman in the division, which I don't even think that's bold. He was Rookie of the Year. But I'll go with that because I don't want to touch the record prediction at all.
Fair enough. And yeah, India is definitely a high quality player. I can't really think of the next best second baseman in the NL Central. So I think that's a fair guess there and fair prediction. But that'll do it for our interview today here with Clay Snowden. Make sure to follow all of Clay Snowden's work on his Twitter. I believe it is at Claiborne Snowden on Twitter, and make sure to follow all of his work with Just Baseball Media at Just Baseball on Twitter as well. Thank you so much, Clay, and enjoy the rest of the Red season. Hopefully it gets a little bit more positive here at the end of it.
Thanks, Logan. Have a good one.
How are you doing today, Wick?
I've been better before. The Reds have been playing some pretty miserable baseball of late, but it is baseball season and it's still early, so it's hard to be too down on them right now.
Yeah, and at least there is a baseball season, right? So you can't complain too much about that.
Exactly. We spent 100 days this winter wondering exactly when we'd be around to actually have a chance to do what we're doing right now. So glad at least that's back, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, the Reds have kind of gotten off to a little bit of a rough start. Just what should the ceiling of expectations be for the Reds this season?
That's a very good question. There's there's just been so much turnover, that it's really hard to expect because so many of the pieces that they moved on from and got rid of were established veterans that have done a lot of very good things at the big league level for a long time. And not to say the cupboard's completely bare behind them. It's largely bare in some spots, including in the bullpen, but there's just not a whole lot of track record out there to suggest that anything is going to be really good this year. I think that's the best way to describe it, is that there's a lot of good pieces that they've got right now that hope to be good enough to gel together at some point over the coming years. And if it happened this year, it would be tremendous, but it's not something I think any of us are really expecting. Throw on top of that the injuries that they've already been dealing with throughout the first week and a half of the season. And you just wonder if, even if they do find a way to make a miracle run this year, if they've already buried themselves so much that it's even going to matter by the time you come to midsummer.
Yeah, I understand that at that point for sure. And how do you see the NL Central kind of shaping out this season? Where do you see the Reds fitting in that?
That's probably they're going to be looking up at least at three teams, I would guess. Depending on what the Cubs choose to do midsummer, and also what the Reds choose to do midsummer. If it's a 162 game sample where they're committed to rolling with what it is they've got right now, I think they could play some pretty good baseball at some point down the road. The only question is if you run into June, July, and then trade season, if some of the pieces that they haven't yet moved on from, or some of the one-year guys they brought in, guys like Tommy Pham, if Mike Minor's back healthy, if they get moved on also at the trade deadline, and suddenly the last 2 months of the season are a shell of a team that's already a shell of its former self right now. I do think Milwaukee and St. Louis are once again the class of the Central. I think the Brewers' pitching situation is going to sort itself out. They've been a little rocky to start the season this year, but I think that's kind of more of a product of a short spring training. But there's some pretty good teams in the Central, and I don't think the Reds are necessarily one of them.
I understand that. Yeah, I have to agree with you with the Brewers and Cardinals being the class. Me being a Cubs fan, it's a little annoying and sad to see, but you got to get through it. So, looking at the Reds, obviously you've mentioned it's a slow start. They maybe aren't going to be the top teams in the NL Central, but what should Reds fans look forward to this season?
I think we've seen a little bit of it already. You've seen Hunter Green, you've seen Nick Lodolo. Green having a little bit more early success, I think, but Lodolo throwing some pretty nasty stuff, especially last night. Looked tremendous and had one bad pitch that Manny Machado punished. But aside from that, looked really good against a very good lineup. I think that's what the Reds are turning themselves towards. And, it's frustrating as a Reds fan because they've been in rebuild mode for most of the last 7 years. The fact that they were turning over the roster this winter, I think we would have stomached it a lot better had they actually had won something beforehand. So to see them kind of tear down what they built up for 2020 and 2021 was a frustrating part. But that said, there's still a lot of really good young pieces. And I think by the end of this year, you'll see what it is they're trying to build around. Jonathan India is going to be back, reigning Rookie of the Year, and a guy who looks like an absolute cornerstone. Tyler Stevenson also, I feel like is he might be the guy the Reds are actually building around. For as good as India is last year, and was last year and is right now, a first-round draft pick catcher the way Tyler Stevenson is and the bat he brings, he might be the centerpiece of what the Reds are trying to do going forward. But you put Green in there with him, you put Lodolo in there, you get Jose Barrero back after he broke his handmate and his wrist, and you've got 5 kind of core young pieces right there that I think the Reds want to build around. If Nick Senzel ever has a chance to stay healthy long enough to show his full range of what he can do, he's still got 3 years of team control after this as well. I think the Reds are trying to build around that. And it's frustrating that they've had to tear so much down so quickly to get to that. But that's a pretty decent 5-7 to kind of start with. And I think that's what Reds fans need to look forward to, because it's pretty clear that's what ownership and the front office are definitely pointing us towards, starting as early as this year.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of talented players, especially in the youth there. It looks like the Reds are still going to be able to kind of add more to that pen of youth with a couple of first-round picks. They have the number 18, number 32 compensatory pick, thanks to the loss of Nick Castellanos. Just what positions do you see the team looking at, and which way do you think they'll go?
That's a very good question. Guys like Matt McLain, they drafted first round last year, is already just rocketing up in Double-A right now. I should have probably added him to the mix of guys that we can expect on the cusp. That's a lot of good shortstops and middle infielders up there. Outfield is the one spot that they really don't have a whole lot of punch there, to be honest. Even if you look down at Triple-A, well, you look at what they gave up off of last year's roster, and we missed Castellanos, and you talk about Jesse Winker being gone, Senzel being hurt as much as he is, and the Shogo experiment not working out. You would like to think that if they would have moved on from all of that, there'd be something in AAA right now that would be kind of filling that void. And there's really not. They've got a lot of younger guys that are very, very toolsy, but nobody who looks like they're going to kind of be a part of end of this year or start of next year to kind of be that foundational outfielder out there. When you've got up the middle set and you've got catching set and you've got some good young pitchers, that's a really good place to start. I don't know if they're going to prioritize drafting for need at that point or not, but I do think that kind of backfilling in the outfield would be nice. And then obviously you could never have too many arms, and all the deals they did this winter, they prioritized a lot of young arms in return, getting Chase Petty for Sonny Gray, a former first round pick, a guy who they hope for the long run is going to be part of that pitching pipeline. But they could use some outfield bats right now. That's the one spot that doesn't look like it's too full.
Yeah, I understand that. And with the loss, like you mentioned, of a couple of the key outfielders, definitely feels like there's a void out there in the
There's definitely a void.
Yeah, I understand that. So I'm going to leave you with one last question here. What's your one bold prediction for the Reds this season?
One bold prediction for the Reds this season. I'm going to say Tyler Stevenson hits 25 home runs this year. I think he's got the size and the power in there. He hasn't really hit a lot of home runs so far through his course of development in the minors. You often see that a lot, though, with high school draft pick catchers. It kind of takes a little bit of time for the offense to catch up. Big, strong kid with a great swing, playing a Great American Ballpark, and there's a DH now, which means when he's not catching, he should be able to pick up enough plate appearances where I think I probably should have gone with 20, but 25 is more bold than 20. So we'll say 25 home runs for Tyler Stevenson and a breakout second full year for the Reds catcher.
Yeah, I like that. I like the boldness. Like you said, 25 instead of 20. I'll take that for sure. Well, I want to thank you, Wick, for taking some time out of your day to talk to me. Again, check out Wick, Terrell, and his stuff at the Red Reporter on Twitter and Red Reporter on SB Nation. And also make sure to follow Wick on Twitter at Wick Terrell. Thank you again, Wick, and good luck to your Reds this season.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. That'll do it today for the Throwdown. Thank you all for watching. We'll catch you next week and all season long.